Hey my friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. In case you hadn't noticed, Chrysler, the inventor of the modern day minivan, has completely redesigned theirs for 2017. This is the all-new Pacifica. It's all new from the ground up. And the best part about this one they've given me to test drive this week is it's a touring model which was one level up from the base grade. And I love it when they do that because it gives me a chance to really sample what most people out there are actually going to buy. So let's check it out. Now before we get out on the test drive, I do want to point out a few things with the styling. The first one here is the face. This is almost identical to the Chrysler 200 sedan, so it has that family relationship in terms of product, but there are a few details here that I like. One of those is this lower black grille down here. Now this is a base model, it doesn't have the driving lights, but they didn't put big blanks out there that tell the world that you didn't spend all the money. They've actually got a separate grille design here that looks pretty good all on its own. Headlights here, these are halogen headlights. No, they're not HIDs, they're not LEDs, but they have a nice look to them even though they are the base headlamp. Now wheels, standard here, 17-inch alloys, not hubcaps. These are the standard wheel even on the LX. Now you can get larger wheels as you step up in the trim grades. Now this wouldn't be a minivan review if I didn't properly demonstrate some of the power toys here. And the first are the power sliding doors. Now it's got two on both sides, they're both power. This is standard on the touring grade. If you go down to the LX, not standard down there. Also back here you have the power lift gate. That's a big deal, especially if you've got a family or if you've got a lot of people that you're getting in and out with a lot of things. This makes life a lot easier. It really does. I love this stuff. Now as we come around here to the back of the Pacifica, they've really taken some risks here, I think, design-wise. This has something different and fresh for the minivan segment, I think. You've got the C-pillar that sort of kicks up, a built-in spoiler here that really gives it sort of an avant-garde type of look. The taillights blend in with this whole black wraparound element. Now it does appear that the glass wraps around here, but this is just a trim element. Down here at the lower, you can see that it's got a very low bumper, which really helps with that lift-in height when you have this door open. The interior of a minivan is probably the most important thing that they can do, and I really think they've done a good job here. I'm going to say that at the outset because I am in one rung up from the base level, and this doesn't feel like base level at all. Here in the Touring, I've got a two-tone interior, this one with the brown and sort of a gray tan color. It has a nice premium look and feel. The materials are very good, and sitting from behind the wheel, it actually has a nice view out. It's a very comfortable sitting. Now I do have cloth seats here, and these particular seats, I have a power seat here. The manual seat is for the passenger in this trim grade, and this cloth has a nice sturdy feel to it, and they're comfortable. One thing I will point out that actually surprised me a little bit is that these seats grab me pretty tight, and I weigh about 170 pounds, and they feel pretty tight to me, and that really surprises me because most American family vehicles are made for American family-sized people. So I will caution you out there, if you're looking at one of these things, and maybe if you're a larger person and it concerns you about seats, do give one of these things a sit before you actually buy one. Most people do, but some people do buy online, so I like to point that out. Make sure you sit in it and make sure you find a comfortable space. Now you do have a tilt and telescoping steering wheel here. The gauge cluster up front, very readable. It's got the new Chrysler style to it. You've got controls here on the steering wheel, and on the back of the steering wheel there's extra buttons for the audio system. An interesting design feature is this sort of kiosk they have here that has your rotary dial shifter as well as your audio controls and your HVAC controls. Parking brakes right here. Now on the shifter, I'm not normally a fan of rotary dial shifters, but in a vehicle like this, I think it's okay. It's very simple to use. It's not a big lever that's in the way here that's hiding other things visually. Other things that are really very cool here is there's two places here for a phone. You can actually take a phone and slide it all the way in here. Down below, another one. There's actually room for two phones or even a tablet down there. There's ports. The other thing is there's a drawer here. Now this is a nice big drawer that you can actually put 2 or 3 water bottles in. Down below on the floor you've got a big sort of a storage tub also with more ports down there, so you can throw devices down there and charge them up or whatever you might have. Then 4 cup holders. There's just a lot of space, and it's low enough that you can still crawl over it and get into the back seat. Now, rear seat space, just like most minivans, is pretty darn good. These seats about halfway forward, halfway back. As you can see, I've got plenty of leg room here. Seating position here on the second row is a little bit lower than I like, but still it's pretty comfortable. These seats, these are the captain's chairs. They do offer an 8-passenger option that has a fill-in here in the center, but this is nice because you've got center access to the third row seat back there, which also offers plenty of space. I'm pretty impressed not only with the legroom and the headroom back there, but you don't feel at all like you're crammed in. Now, these seats, they're very versatile. They have the stow and go capability, and I'll show you this here in a second, but basically that rear seat folds all the way down into a rear tub, and these seats, they fold all the way down into the floor, and so you get a fully flat load floor, and you don't actually have to remove the seats. That's a very cool thing, and that's standard on all the trim grades here. And if you're not using that, down below you've actually got storage bins where those seats would normally go, here, as well as in the back. Behind that third row seat you've got a really low storage bin, and because this one isn't a top level trim grade with that built-in vacuum cleaner they advertise, you've got a big storage area where that vacuum cleaner would go there on the side. Now, there is one poison pill to all of this versatility, the storage bins and the seats folding into the floor, and that's the fact that there's no place for a spare tire, so you only get an inflator, an emergency kit. There is a spare tire as an option on some trim grades, but not here. Now, one thing I want to show you is how the stow and go seat works, because I think that's a pretty neat feature. Now, to put it down, first you have to make sure this front seat's all the way forward, and then down here in the floor, you just raise up the floorboard and it actually holds itself there. Back here, there's a loop you pull, and then the whole seat actually goes down into the floor completely flush, and then you just come here, put this back down, and now you've got a completely flat low floor without having to actually remove a seat. I think that's pretty neat. Can you tell I'm impressed with this interior? It really it hits all my hot buttons. It's well designed, a lot of features, a lot of versatility, and it's comfortable. Therefore, I give it 5 out of 5 stars. When it comes to infotainment, this is a pretty basic level system here. We're one level up from the LX, the base model, and the one thing you get here that you don't get in the LX is satellite radio in addition to AM, FM. Now, there is connectivity here, Bluetooth as well as USB. The menu's very easy to use and the visibility is very good. 6 speakers, the sound quality is pretty decent for a basic radio, and radio really is what it is. Infotainment might be sort of stretching the description a little bit, but I'm pretty impressed with the system. For this price grade, I think we're just about in the right sweet spot, so I give this system 4 out of 5 stars. Under the hood of the Pacifica in all models is a 3.6-liter Pentastar V6. It has a lot of upgrades this year that are really geared towards lowering emissions as well as giving it better fuel economy. It has 287 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque. And with this 9-speed automatic transmission, the EPA rates it at 28 mpg highway and 22 mpg combined. Reasonable power for a minivan. It is pretty much top of the class or pretty close to it when it comes to horsepower. My big takeaway from driving it this week is that it's refined, it's pretty quiet. This has always been a good V6, the 3.6-liter V6, but with this 9-speed automatic transmission, I'm pretty surprised about the fact that they've actually ironed out a lot of the issues that I've had with this transmission before. It used to shift rather bizarrely, it had clunky shifts. It was erratic, but they've completely tamed it. They've got it to where it works like a regular transmission. It doesn't present itself as anything different than what you'd expect. So I like that. And driving it around town, it just always seems to be right where you want it in the gears. It's not hunting around. So that makes it good. Now, fuel economy, we're as high as 28 highway. It's rated at 22 combined. And I was pretty pleased with the fact that in my week with it, driving around town and out on the highway, almost a perfect mix, I got 24 mpg. Pretty good. So I'm pleased with this powertrain. 5 out of 5 stars. And around town and out on the highway, I've been pretty impressed this week with how refined this new chassis is. They made a few big changes. It's got a long wheelbase. It now has a fully independent suspension at the rear. And of course, a stiffer chassis, a lot of sound deadening, and what that's translated to is a vehicle that handles just like a nice luxury sedan. It's got light steering, and it's, dare I say, fun to drive. The tuning of this chassis, a little bit firmer than before, and it's not to say it has a rough ride, but it has handling now. It doesn't roll, it doesn't feel like a boat. It just has a nice, pleasant feeling around town that actually, well, it just sort of makes it fun to drive, for lack of a better way of putting it. I think the big takeaway is it just doesn't feel like a minivan anymore. It's refined, it feels a step up in terms of premiumness. Well, anyway, bottom line is I'm impressed with the way it drives. It just has a goodness to it. Therefore, I give the chassis 5 of 5 stars. Now, if you watch my videos, one thing you know is I'm a stickler for quality. The little things like fit and finish, rattles and squeaks. And I gotta tell you folks, I am pretty impressed with what Chrysler's done here. I was fully prepared to look for all sorts of little things that were really gonna get my attention. But to be honest with you, in my week with this vehicle, it didn't rattle, it didn't squeak. There aren't any body panels that aren't lining up the way they should. The paint's of good quality, and the interior materials surprised me quite a bit in how well they put together a package that feels very consistent across the board. So quality here gets 5 of 5 stars. Well, my friends, I gotta tell you, I really do think that Chrysler has knocked it out of the park with this thing. And part of how this game works for me is that when I get a vehicle that I'm honestly not really having high expectations for, which that was the case here, I'm usually knocked off my feet, and that's exactly what happened here. I really do think this is a standout in class, and to be honest with you, if I were buying a minivan right now, I'd buy it, which means it goes on the I'd buy it list. I really do like it that much. I think it's now top of class when it comes to all the things that you measure a minivan with. Now, looking at the specs, we're at $31,000 on this one. You can get it well under 30 depending on the trim grade, and this does have an option or two on it. I think in this particular package, the Touring, which Chrysler tells me they're going to sell the most of, great value here. So I put value at 5 stars. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 5 stars for the review. Very good. I'm Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride. You know, a minivan is a vehicle that a lot of people are just afraid to buy. They're afraid of what it might say about them, what people are going to think, or maybe how it makes them feel by making that choice to buy a minivan. And I've owned a minivan before, and what I can tell you is they just make sense, especially if you're comparing it to the idea of getting a full-size truck or a full-size SUV, maybe a crossover. And granted, if you have to tow a big boat or something, that's completely different. But there's a lot of people, families, or maybe you have a business where you need to have cargo carrying ability, you need to have passenger space, but you can only afford one vehicle. A minivan just makes sense. Not only is it more fuel efficient than an SUV, a truck, it handles better. There's usually more versatility here than there is in a crossover. Almost every measure, a minivan just makes more sense. But buyers are fickle. What are you going to do? Anyway, if you like the test drive you just saw, click on the big red link right here on your screen. I do test drive 1 to 2 vehicles a week, plus there's a new video almost every other day. There's always something new. So stay tuned.